from pre-modernization to post-modernization. In this book from the 70s, a British book, there's a lot listed. And now we have said first and foremost what is modernization. And that is the industrialization of a country, and that there is a proper administration, and also that there is training in technology. And intellectual abilities are there a lot, and also that there is a working system of medical and social welfare things. And most people striving to get that. In some countries who have reached it already, the expansion of industrialization of other things is oftentimes not so much liked, because the negative consequences are seen that we're overweighing the positive ones. For example, is the seeing of smoke associated in these countries when with destroying of the environment. Other countries, if they see smoke, they just see the modernization, positive things. Some countries are diminished in their growth of modernization because they're having a big increase in population. For example, India risen the population from the 1950s to the 1980s in a double. Now, there are not also something else. The technology has made progress, and it is possible with atomic weapons to basically kill everyone on the planet, but also has the medicine made progress, and it is also possible now to prevent infant mortality almost completely. Now, there are different political ideas. For example, Marxism arisen, and that gives an explanation for the misery that some people have, and also how it gets better. Nationalism also, that gives the people cultural identity, and also solidarity against foreign exploiters as idea. The whole industrialization and modernization is fueled on fossil fuels, a lot of it. And there's a big shift of wealth from these modernization countries to some other countries, to the people who have their control over the oil, for example. For example, in Kuwait or in Abu Dhabi in Libya, Saudi Arabia. And also another thing is, for example, the company General Motors has made in the year 1970 so many cars in the amount of which the cars which were sold in the year 1970 by General Motors was more money than the whole country of Yugoslavia, Greek or Egypt is doing with altogether. Now, some people have already released post-modernization or post-industrialization. And pre-industrialization was mainly working on extracting raw materials from the ground, so coal or whatever. And industrialization was a lot about manufacturing of goods, and now it goes more to intellectual abilities, to universities, to theoretical knowledge. And theoretical knowledge is an asset which can be used technically by everyone, and it cannot be used up. That is why many countries putting a lot of money in education and also. Another thing he argued in this book is when said that humans no longer fight against nature, but against other humans. And there's also a lot of things necessary to keep societies now working. There's a lot of health necessary, welfare, and so on. And there are also firms now necessary to work on the system, basically. There are trade associations representing the consumers and the producers of things. Now, there are many different jobs listed. The United States lists over 20,000 occupations types. And some of them need years to study for, others just a few months. And in these occupations, there are the more foreign workers working, where it's easier to go from job to job. And that happens, for example, in Germany and the United States of America. The next thing is, if the people have grown apart, is argued in this book, that the people, they are making holiday in other countries. They are no longer bound to the rhythms of the season, to agriculture when they have to sow the seeds, or to the manufacture of the machines or whatever. They are bound to other things. And they're making the holidays in other countries. And if they have in another town a better occupation which gives more money, they are changing the town. And if now a family moves from town to town, they are losing their contact to their relatives. And that way the distinctive flavor, dialect, attitudes and so on of the region gets lost. But the people all over share a common body of knowledge about mass media. They watch the same movies, the same books, and so on. They have a shared knowledge of mass media. And through that they are able to communicate with each other over their other social backgrounds. And the next thing in this book is that also the clothes have changed. People are no longer identifiable by their clothes, what class they have, and the fashion is changing rapidly. And the old becomes the new. So basically the people were what they want. And many people decide to try, if they have the money and the means to acquire it, and also know what clothes to wear. They have been trying to become part of through the t-shirts, what they were, to become part of a jazz group, so to become part of it, or of movies or something. But here's an argument in this book that does not give a central link of community actually, as once the churches or other things did. Now another thing here is said that the most post-modernization countries or modernization countries have reached literacy. Basically everyone can read and write. Other countries are still struggling with it. And also basically all around the world with the mass media aspect, getting these mass media, and they can see what can be achieved and they want to achieve it. And now people, they have all something pervading in all their life, and that is bureaucracy and organization listed in this book, is said in this book here. And that means that all the people are basically organized, all live by the same rules and so on, and all people are organized, but they don't get a feeling of togetherness. They're just organized. Another thing that's said is that of children, of students, of pupils, it is expected to find a form of free expression and of identity. They are offered choice and also the ability to express themselves, but they don't really have the structures and the loyalty necessary to form an identity in the first place. They are organized in two big scales in schools. They are moving from classroom to classroom with different pupils and so on, as he argued. The next thing is that also authorities figures have declined. People no longer have so much policeman, person, parent, political father figure or God listed in this book here as an authority figure. Also it's been said that also the elites are calling for equality. And people no longer work so much in their own business, in their own bookshop or whatever, in their own corner shop. They work for large corporations. And they are in these corporations not interested in the profit which they make or the whole economy, but just in their own employment, because they don't take part in the profit. The next thing is when many people don't blame themselves or another individual person for a problem if it occurs, but the whole system. Many people want to say the system, how the society works, but they don't want to take the risks to adapt a new one. Then the rise of sociology has happened, and there was also said that many people who were oppressed in wood forms, whatever, were also in by the whole group and by the whole system. And that had brought progress in discrimination against women, where women get the same rights as men, and also that people who don't have a white skin color also get the same rights. This idea of sociology, that every form of discipline is a problem, also went on into achievements, was been said in this book here. So that also schools are affected by it. And there's no said that in the schools the free expression is more important than the skill or literacy to get. And that there are people from other countries who are going on to these countries, want to get these modernizations, literacy, skills and so on, but in the schools, in these schools are oftentimes offered expression of these other things. Also another thing is when said that the people have grown more homogeneous, that the people have an opinion about many different things, basically about all things, and that it is possible for a small group of activists to make, at that point, something and then change the whole direction of the whole country. A small group of activists at one point is able to change the whole direction over the democratic majority. But that it is not so big in countries of pluralism, many countries who are post-modernization in Western countries, because there's a great form of pluralism with different religions, different political parties, different institutions. That doesn't happen so much there, that some group of activists can have an influence on the whole political region. And another thing then said is that in some countries there are other secondary things growing, and they are basically striving for having just one identity, one religion, one ethnic and one country. That is also not so strong in Western countries. In Western countries, post-modernization, there's the idea of liberty and people of different ethnic groups with different ideologies and different ideas are there, so that these countries are giving the people the option to have their own individualism. That all is according to that book here, Reader's Digest Library of Modern Knowledge, Book 2, Part 8, Man and Society, written by C. L. Beddock, Hugh Jocelyn, Emily Court, Peter Loyce, Lucy Mayer, David Martin, Jacqueline Sarsby, Ruth D. Whitehouse, J.C. Woodburn, on the page 444 and 445. If you click this video away, then please tell me what the reason for it was. Otherwise, hi and welcome. I'm trying to learn political science today, the dilemma of modern man. And after we've done that, we're going to do leg injury prevention training. If you participate in the leg injury prevention training, then it's already onwards. We're having such a big double page. We read it already completely, and we're already there. And I'm going to go over text of things which are argued and listed here. The book is from the 70s, and it is a British book. and let's repeat them, we want to memorize them. Whether true or not, we want to memorize them. So modernity means industrialization, training in science and technology, a proper administration and the full range of social and medical services. That is the driven thing many countries are doing for. That's what many countries are striving for. And now, some wealthier countries have done that. Here's a little metaphor, I think, is it? In some already modernization-reached countries, people see smoke or dust, and in the industrial post-modernization countries, they see it as something which is polluting and not so good, and the disadvantages of further expanding the industrialization as something bad. Other countries don't see that or feel that when they see smoke, they want to achieve it. Some countries are limited in their progress or in their listed progress because their population has grown. India has doubled in 30 years from 1950 to 1980. The technology is able to kill all people with atomic weapons, but also has the medicine improved and infant mortality and so on are almost at zero. There are also political ideas. Marxism, for example, gives an explanation for the misery and also the hope that it get better. Nationalism gives people a cultural identity and solidarity against foreign exploiters. There's also basically everywhere the motive of sacrifices have to be done now. Sacrifices have to be done now for a better future. The next thing is that money is shifted from wealthier countries to some people who are controlling the oil in other countries or resources necessary for the industrialization or modernization. For example, in the countries Saudi Arabia, Iran, Kuwait, Abu Dhabi, Libya. Also, some firms are producing so much as other countries are in total in just 1 year. General Motors makes in 1 year as much money or sells cars in the worth of money as complete Yugoslavia, Egypt, or Greek are making. Or Yugoslavia. Some countries have reached post-industrialization, and these countries are shifting to more technology and intellectual abilities of the people, so intellectual universities studying. And the next thing is a new professional class has arisen, the students, the university people. The next thing is that people no longer are fighting against nature, but against other humans. The world has grown complex, and there's necessary for many new professions and skills to direct these complex things. For example, a little bit listed here, the corporate guilds, family concerns. In the West, new professions and skills proliferate with the growth in size and complexity of modern industry. The corporate guilds and family concerns of the past have been supplanted by private and state firms, business and trade associations, and bodies representing producers and consumers. So bodies representing producers and consumers, firms, businesses and trade associations, corporate guilds, family concerns. I think that was not a third. Okay, there are more than 20,000 jobs listed, some taking years to study for, others shorter. In these jobs there's more hopping possible, and in these jobs the foreign workers, for example in Germany and United States of America, are working. The people have grown further apart from each other. They're making holiday in other countries. Their mobility has increased. If they get a better occupation with more money in another town, they move at home. And if a family moves, they are separated from their relatives, as it was in the past not, the family was not moving. Also has the distinctive flavor of some region where speech, attitudes and so on got lost because the people are moving. But the people, they are consuming the same mass media over their religious, racial or social backgrounds. They are sharing a body of knowledge over these movies, over these books, music and so on, over which they can communicate. And mass media is also reaching developing countries, and we're seeing what we can do. The mass media have raised the hopes of millions in developing countries. They instill a readiness to change and broadcast information on crucial issues such as health and agriculture. In the modernized countries, most people can read and write. There are some other countries where they can not. Also, Christian missions are spreading ideas or spreading modernization in other countries. Fashion has changed. Fashion is changing for us. The old is the new, and people are no longer identifiable by what they were. They try to become part of a group. They try to wear t-shirts or something of pop groups, of progressive dress, of students or something else, but these communities are not giving a real local, but these exclusive groups provide no central link or community or of local character and style as the churches and other voluntary organizations once did. So they don't have provide no central link or no real community. That is it. The next thing is the humans, they are all underlying regulations and the bureaucracy. All are underlying the bureaucracy. All people are organized. Bureaucracy's demands have created the organization when conformists and well-trained, but lacking in the old values of togetherness. But that gives them, even though we're all underlying the bureaucracy, not a feeling of togetherness. The next thing is that also in the schools, the people are expected to form identity, the identity and their own expression of themselves, but they're basically moving just from timetable from room to room with other students, and they're not really able to do that. They are offered choice and freedom expression. They are offered choice and free expression without the stable structures and loyalties which make identity possible. So it is, they don't have stable structures and loyalties which make identity possible in the first place. Problems of authority. Also other authority things like parents, schoolmaster, parson, policeman, political father figure, or God have also diminished or gotten less. Also the elites are calling for equality and free choice. People are blaming the system and not themselves or another individual person, but the whole system. People working in their own self-business person, also their own shops and so on, no longer. They are working for big corporations. They are not interested in the profit of a corporation, just in their own employment. They are not part in the profit of the firm. What was the next thing? The people grouping basic thinking is in terms of good or bad social system, rather of individual behavior. They're thinking the whole system is either good or bad, and not their own or someone else's individual thought. Affluence has also created a new grouping opposed to both, to the settled prospect of a functionary and to the risky pursuit of profit. So some people don't want the system which is running at the present time in whatever country or system they are living, but they also don't want to take the risk to take a new one. And also, the sociology has arisen, and that showed that many people individually are now. The growth of sociology was part of this switch because it purported to show how the individual and certain deprived groups were oppressed by social arrangements. That people are not blaming a single person but the whole system. And that was, for example, in the past already done. Changes were done in discrimination based on skin color or on sex, but now it's also here they're saying also about achievements, and they mean that in education, many fear that a slackening of discipline has led to a loss of essential skill in the use of numbers and reading. Such a loss is damaging in a competitive world that requires abilities based on theoretical knowledge. The emerging nations and immigrants from the third world seek skills and literacy, but the affluent sectors are downgrading these in favor of self-expression. So that also achievements and an education have gotten down, and that their more self-expression and own personal development are favored. Some people from other countries coming to these countries and they want to get education, skill and literacy, but there in these schools are other things now told. In the reading one. That was what we already had. 9 minutes. Apathy and urban terror. While society becomes more homogeneous and people gain a wider range of personal opinions, a new currency of collective power exercises ever wider influence. So the people have grown more together, more the same, and they have a wider range of personal opinions. I don't see now how it fits in the other two sentences. Whatever. That means in some countries, small groups of activists can direct big trade unions and eventually whole political parties. Faced with such well-placed factions, the democratic majority may not succeed in exercising control. What I'm saying is that a small group can, because the people are in big homogeneous groups, a small group can affect the whole country basically, and not the democratic majority. Pluralism, variety, that is all just this, I'm just explaining that. Pluralism, variety in faiths, parties and institutions tend to check this trend towards a common pattern, at least in the West. The limits of dissent have been widened, migrant communities have been established, and some local vitality returns through community politics. That's a complicated sentence. Tends to check this trend towards a common pattern. They mean that is not so strong, because there is a variety in faiths, in political parties and institutions. I think that is what we're saying here. So we're saying that a small group can affect the whole country because all are basically homogeneous. But there are many countries in which is a variety of religious groups, of political parties, or of institutions, and that keeps that a little low happening. The limits of dissent have been widened. I don't really know what dissent is. The limits of dissent have been widened. Migrant communities have been established, and some local vitality returns through community politics. They're saying that, so at least the second part, that there's community politics happening, and that returns a bit again back to the political smaller part. That not one group is affecting the whole country, but there's also local politics, and also a bit in migrant communities have been established. But the majority at the center is often open to the charge of being passive and dangerously apathetic. The result is to leave room for every kind of extremism, from urban guerrillas and hijackers to intense political cells and devotees of anarchic experience among minorities in many fields. So the first thing is that most people are not caring for what is happening. And because most people don't care, it's able that extremism, extreme forms of political ideas can have a room. And that can happen now through urban guerrillas and hijackers. The book is from the 70s. Through urban guerrillas and hijacking. Devotees of anarchic experience among minorities in many fields. I don't know what they mean with the last part. And devotees of anarchic experience, that is in quotation mark, experience, among minorities. I think they mean but it would fit to the rest that also there are some people in some minority groups. There's also, because most people don't care, a room for individuals who are making extremism. I don't know what they mean, but that would fit that they would mean, I think. Secular monopolies of faith arise in communist countries and form vigorous, resistant enclaves in the West, such as the Communist Party in Italy. Nationalistic states are set up which gradually eliminate other racial groups, other cultures and other religions. Most societies decide to ride out the storm of change by demand for ethnic and ideological unity. Only the West, partially and intermittently, attempts the perilous and unique experiment with liberty and pluralism. Okay, I think I know what I mean. So secular monopolies of faith arise in communist countries and form vigorous resistant enclaves in the West, such as the Communist Party in Italy. This is complex. I try to understand what I mean. Of faith? I don't understand. But there are also other political parties forming. The Communist Party in Italy, for example, the books from the 70s. Nationalist, and it is a British one. Nationalistic states are set up which gradually eliminate other racial groups or cultures and other religions. So there are also coming national groups, nationalistic countries, and they are trying to get other people with other cultures and other ethnics out. Most societies decide to ride out the storm of change by demand for ethnic and ideological unity. So most people don't want to change to modernism or to postmodernism, and they want to have that all people have the same ethnic and also an ideological unity. And only some countries, Western countries, are having liberty and pluralism with people with many different religions and social views and opinions living together. Okay, we are through with both pages. We don't have time. In the next part, what we're going to do here, we're going to go over it all again. And then we're going to save it all from memory. Whatever we do, we don't have time for like intervention. That means, if you were here for political science, then that was for political science part. If you were here for like intervention training, I'm sorry, we don't have time. Thank you very much. Anyways, and next time.